The cadet's first day. The sky above the Deathworld was darker than usual, the twin suns hanging like fierce watchful eyes in the sky. The cadet stood at the edge of the training grounds, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it. Her first day as a soldier, and already, the planet felt like it was watching her. She wasn't sure if she could handle the deadly creatures that roamed this world, but she had to try. She had no choice. She had trained for months, learning survival skills, weapons handling, and the harsh realities of living in a world where danger lurked at every corner. But today, as she stood at the edge of the vast training field, the fear was more real than ever. The creatures here were not like anything she had seen before, massive, fast, and with deadly claws and fangs. She had heard the stories, seen the footage, but facing one in person, that was a different story altogether. Her instructor, Commander Vax, stood nearby, watching her every move. The other cadets were grouped together, some whispering nervously, others trying to act brave. But no one dared to speak directly to the cadet. She was just another rookie to them, until they saw what happened next. The ground shook suddenly, and a low growl filled the air. The cadet's eyes widened as the giant creature appeared from behind a cluster of rocks. It was a massive beast, with 6 legs, sharp spines along its back, and glowing eyes that seemed to pierce the air itself. It was known as a razor fang, a predator feared by all who dared to challenge it. It stalked toward her, its massive paws leaving deep imprints in the soft earth. The cadet froze. Her body screamed for her to run, to hide, to do anything but stand there. She had trained for this moment, but nothing could have prepared her for the fear that gripped her. The other cadets were silent, their eyes wide, knowing the deadly creature would tear her apart. They had seen it happen before. But something unexpected happened. The razor fang stopped. It paused, its glowing eyes narrowing in confusion. The cadet didn't move, barely even breathing, watching the creature with wide eyes. And then, slowly, the razor fang backed away. The cadet's heart skipped a beat. Was it afraid of her? She glanced around, but no one spoke. No one moved. The beast turned around and disappeared back into the darkness as if it had never been there at all. The cadet stood in shock, her body trembling, her mind racing. What had just happened? Was she imagining things? Why had the razor fang, a creature known for its bloodlust, suddenly backed down? She had heard rumors that some cadets had strange abilities, but she never thought it could happen to her. Commander Vax stepped forward, his stern expression unchanged. "Cadet," he said in a low voice, "that's enough for today. But remember, on this world survival is earned. Never forget that." The cadet nodded, still processing what had just happened. She hadn't just survived the day, she had made the apex predator of the Deathworld retreat. But why? What made her different? As she left the training ground, the whispers started. The cadet was no longer just another rookie. She had something no one understood, something that set her apart, and she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The training grounds. The cadet's second day on the Deathworld felt different. The air was thick with tension, and the oppressive weight of the planet seemed to bear down on her every step. The training grounds were vast, stretching out in all directions, filled with obstacles, traps, and simulations meant to push each cadet to their limits. But as she walked, her thoughts kept returning to the strange encounter with the razor fang. The memory of its retreat lingered like a shadow, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, or perhaps something was right. The other cadets noticed too. There was a shift in the way they looked at her now. Some tried to avoid her gaze, while others seemed to study her, as if wondering what made her different. No one spoke of it openly, but the tension was palpable. Commander Vax's words echoed in her mind. Survival is earned. But what did that mean? How had she earned this? What had made the creature pull back from her? Today she would have to face the next phase of her training. Combat drills. She was to navigate through a deadly obstacle course designed to test her endurance, agility, and, most importantly, her ability to survive against the planet's many predators. The cadet felt a knot tighten in her stomach as she stood at the starting line, the sounds of distant creatures echoing through the air. "Remember," Vax's voice cut through the noise, "this isn't just about skill, it's about adapting, understanding your enemy. If you freeze or hesitate, you're as good as dead. Go." With that, the cadet sprinted forward, her boots kicking up dust as she rushed through the course. The first challenge came quickly, an electrified fence buzzing ominously. She had to leap over it, the current threatening to knock her out with a single touch. With a deep breath, she pushed her body past the electric shock, landing on the other side with barely a stumble. But then, she heard it. A rustling noise, a faint growl. She spun around, her heart skipping a beat. A pair of glowing eyes appeared through the brush, and the cadet's blood ran cold. Another creature. This one was smaller than the razorfang, but no less deadly. It was a skyrake, a sleek, fast predator with talons sharp enough to slice through metal. The cadet froze for a moment, panic rising in her chest. But then, she remembered the feeling from yesterday, the sensation that had made the razorfang back away. She steadied her breath, focusing, trying to recall the strange pull she had felt the day before. Without thinking, she stepped forward, her eyes locked on the skyrake. The creature hesitated, its glowing eyes narrowing as it studied her. And then, to her surprise, it backed away, retreating into the dense underbrush, its piercing gaze never leaving her. Her heart raced. But this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from confusion. Was this a fluke? Or was something truly different about her? As she continued the course, she began to notice a pattern. Every predator she encountered seemed to shy away, as if repelled by an invisible force. She didn't understand it, but she couldn't deny it. Her presence was affecting them in a way that no one had ever seen before. By the time she crossed the finish line, breathless and confused, the other cadets were waiting, their eyes filled with questions. No one dared to ask her directly, but the tension in the air was undeniable. She had become the center of attention, both for her unexpected success and for the strange, unexplainable power that seemed to be growing inside her. Commander Vax approached her, his usual cold demeanor now mixed with something that resembled curiosity. "Cadet," he said, "you've done well. But I suggest you keep your eyes open. There's more to this world than you know, and it's watching you." The cadet nodded, a knot forming in her stomach. She wasn't sure what was happening to her, but one thing was clear. She wasn't just a rookie anymore. She was a mystery, and in a place like this that could either make her a target or a weapon. The unseen power. The cadet couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. Even when the training exercises ended, even when the sun dipped below the horizon and the planet fell into its eerie alien silence, the sensation lingered. It was like the air itself was charged, heavy with an invisible presence that wasn't there before. She had tried to dismiss it, told herself it was just the pressure of being on a death world. But she knew deep down that this feeling was different. Something about her was changing, and it wasn't just the strange way the creatures avoided her. She had felt that shift in the air when the skyrake retreated, just as she had felt it when the razorfang pulled away. But now, she wasn't sure what it meant or how to control it. Commander Vax had noticed too. He wasn't the type to offer praise, but today, something in his eyes had flickered. A spark of recognition, maybe even concern. As the cadet walked past him, she could almost hear the unspoken words in his gaze. He knew something. Something she didn't. After the day's exercises, she returned to her quarters, her mind racing. She had completed the obstacle course with ease, outlasting the other cadets. But that didn't feel like the victory. It was the creatures. They were the ones who seemed to fear her. What had changed? And why was she the only one who felt it? She sat on her bunk, staring out at the dark landscape. The planet's moons cast a faint glow, and she watched as the shadows shifted across the training grounds. She had to know what was happening to her, but she couldn't do it alone. The next day, during a break, she sought out one of the senior cadets, a quiet, older woman named Kara. Kara had been in the military longer than most, and her eyes carried the weight of experience and secrets. "Kara," the cadet began, her voice uncertain, "I need to ask you something about the creatures. Have you ever seen them pull back like that? Retreat when they're supposed to attack?" Kara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked around, her gaze sweeping over the other cadets nearby. She lowered her voice, leaning in close. "You've felt it, haven't you?" she whispered. The cadet's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Kara's lips curled into a knowing, almost sad smile. "It's the pull. Some of us, very few mind you, are born with it. A connection to something older than this planet, older than the creatures. An ancient power, one that controls the predators. They sense it even if we don't fully understand it yet. But you have it." The cadet's heart skipped. "What do you mean? I didn't ask for this. I just want to survive." Kara nodded slowly. "Survival is just the beginning. This isn't just about being a soldier. It's about understanding what's inside you. The creatures feel it, yes, but there are others too. People who know about this power, people who would use you for it." She paused, her voice growing serious. "You have to be careful, cadet. This isn't just about fighting, it's about controlling something much greater." The cadet swallowed, her mind racing with new questions. An ancient power? The creatures weren't just afraid of her. They were responding to something deep inside her, something she didn't even know she had. And now, there were others out there who knew about it. But what did it mean? What was she supposed to do with this newfound ability? And why had it awakened now of all times? The day's training was set to begin soon, but the cadet couldn't shake the weight of Kara's words. She wasn't just another rookie on a deadly world anymore. She was a pawn in something much larger, and whether she liked it or not, she would have to learn to control whatever power was stirring within her before it controlled her. The alien connection. The next few days passed in a blur, each moment filled with training, mystery, and the growing sense that the planet itself was not just a hostile environment. It was alive, watching, and perhaps even waiting for something. But the cadet couldn't stop thinking about Kara's words. The idea of having an ancient power inside her was both terrifying and exhilarating. She had always believed that survival was about physical strength, skill, and cunning. But this was something else entirely, something beyond her understanding. The cadet began to notice more strange occurrences as she continued her training. It wasn't just the creatures that were reacting to her. Other cadets, too, seemed to treat her differently. Some avoided her altogether, while others whispered behind her back, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and fascination. She could feel their unease, their curiosity. They could sense it, too, the change that was happening inside her. But no one would tell her what it meant, not even Kara. She had tried to seek out the older cadet again, but Kara was always busy, always too caught up in her own assignments. It was as if she were deliberately avoiding her. And the more the cadet pushed, the more she realized. Kara wasn't just withholding information, she was trying to protect her. One evening, after another exhausting day of training, the cadet couldn't take it anymore. She needed answers. So, in the quiet darkness of her room, she decided to do something she had never done before. She reached out to the one place she had been warned to avoid, the old archives beneath the training facility. The building was a relic of the past, its walls lined with ancient texts and forbidden knowledge. Most cadets were told never to go down there, as it contained materials from a time long before the military's control of the Deathworld. But the cadet wasn't afraid. If anything, the allure of the unknown called to her, and she couldn't ignore it any longer. She snuck down into the archives, her footsteps echoing through the empty halls. The room was dimly lit by flickering lights, and the air was thick, with the smell of old paper and dust. She searched through rows of ancient books and digital records, her eyes scanning every title, every symbol, desperate for answers. Then she found it. A small, dusty book with strange markings on the cover. Unlike anything she had ever seen, As she opened it, she was met with pages filled with alien symbols, some of which seemed to shimmer faintly as her fingers touched them. The text wasn't written in any language she knew, but the symbols seemed to pulse with a rhythm, almost, as if they were alive. A cold shiver ran down her spine. This was no ordinary text. It was something far older, something alien. She flipped through the pages, each one more cryptic than the last, until she reached a diagram, an image of a creature that looked strikingly similar to the sky rakes she had encountered during her training. But this creature wasn't alone. Surrounding it were others, predators of all sizes, but they were bowed down, almost worshipping the creature in the center. The caption beneath the image, though incomplete, read, "The Sovereign, the origin of all fear and respect, the one who commands them all." Her heart raced. Was this the source of the power she felt? Was this creature, the Sovereign, the reason the apex predators were avoiding her? The pages were damaged, torn in some places, but there was no mistaking it. The Sovereign wasn't just a myth, it was real, and for reasons she couldn't understand, she was somehow connected to it. The cadet felt a chill run through her, not from the cold, but from the deep, unsettling realization that she was part of something much larger than herself. She wasn't just a cadet, she was a link to a power that could shape the fate of the Deathworld. As she closed the book, her mind racing, she heard a sound. Footsteps echoing through the hall. Someone was coming. She quickly tucked the book under her arm and slipped into the shadows, her breath catching in her throat. Whoever it was, they couldn't find her here, not now. But as she crouched in the darkness, her thoughts spinning, she realized something else. She wasn't just hiding from the people who were after her knowledge. She was hiding from the truth. The power she had inside her wasn't something she could control yet, but it was already starting to control her. A rising threat. The cadet's nights had grown restless. Dreams of creatures bowing before her, of endless darkness stretching across the planet, haunted her every moment of sleep. When she woke, she felt as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to take the next step, waiting for her to claim what she had yet to fully understand. The power inside her was growing stronger, but so were the dangers around her. The other cadets, once wary, now looked at her with a mixture of fear, envy, and suspicion. They didn't understand what was happening to her, but it was clear that, whatever it was something they couldn't control, and that made them dangerous. On the training grounds, the cadets' performances were unmatched. She passed every challenge, every obstacle, with ease. The creatures, those once fearsome beasts, seemed to avoid her completely. It was as if they recognized something in her, something primal that made them pull away. The cadet couldn't explain it, but she had started to notice that the more the predators retreated, the more the other cadets began to look at her with distrust. They whispered when they thought she couldn't hear, their voices laced with unease. But that wasn't her only concern. There was something darker lurking just beyond the surface, a sense of imminent danger she couldn't ignore. She began to notice signs that something was shifting in the hierarchy of the planet's ecosystem. The apex predators were acting strangely, moving in unusual patterns, almost as if they were waiting for something to trigger their full aggression. One evening, as the cadet trained alone in the simulation field, she heard the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps approaching. Her instincts kicked in, and she immediately reached for her weapon, a sleek pulse rifle designed for quick, powerful shots. She scanned the area, every nerve on high alert. But when the creature finally emerged from the trees, it wasn't one of the usual predators she had encountered. It was bigger, stronger, a new breed, one she had never seen before. The creature's eyes glowed a deep crimson, and its body was covered in dark, thick armor. It moved with a terrifying grace, its massive claws scraping against the ground as it stalked closer. The cadet felt her heart pound in her chest, the adrenaline rushing through her veins. She aimed her rifle, preparing to fire. But then, to her shock, the creature stopped. It didn't advance. Instead, it stood there, staring at her, its gaze cold and calculating. It knew something she didn't. A voice echoed in her mind. A low, guttural whisper, almost like a command. You are not the only one with power. The word sent a chill through her body. She had felt it before, the strange invisible pull that made the other creatures retreat. But this was different. It was a challenge. The creature wasn't afraid of her. It was testing her, pushing her to confront whatever power lay dormant within her. Before she could react, the creature let out a deafening roar, shaking the very ground beneath her feet. The cadet's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't a test anymore. This was real. The creature lunged forward, its claws slashing the air. In that moment, the cadet felt something awaken within her. Something she had no control over, but something that was undeniably powerful. The creature's movement slowed, its body rigid with hesitation. It was as if the very air around them had shifted, vibrating with an energy it couldn't comprehend. Then, in a flash, the creature froze. Its glowing eyes dulled and its body slumped to the ground, defeated without a single shot being fired. The cadet stood there, panting, staring in disbelief at the fallen predator. What had just happened? The ground around her began to hum, the air crackling with energy. She could feel it now. A deep, ancient connection to the world around her, one that pulsed with raw power. But it wasn't just the creatures that were afraid of her. Something much larger was watching. Something that wasn't bound by the rules of this world. The cadet didn't know it yet, but her encounter with the creature had just triggered something far greater than she could ever have imagined. The power she had been given was only a fraction of what was coming. And as the shadows of the Deathworld stretched further, she realized that she was no longer just fighting to survive. She was part of a larger game, a battle that spanned far beyond her understanding. And the rising threat wasn't just from the creatures. It was from everything that had been waiting for her to awaken. The final trial. The cadet stood before the massive gates, her heart racing with anticipation. Today was the day of the final trial, the moment she would prove herself worthy to continue as a soldier in the most elite unit on the Deathworld. The gates were vast, towering over her like the jaws of some ancient beast, ready to swallow her whole. Behind them lay the most dangerous and unforgiving terrain in all of the planet, where only the strongest survived. It was a place where cadets were tested to their absolute limits, where the Deathworld itself became an adversary. But as she gazed at the gates, her thoughts weren't on the trial itself. They were on something far darker. The creature she had faced the other day, the armored behemoth with the crimson eyes, hadn't been an ordinary predator. It had been something else, something more intelligent. And in the instant before it had fallen, she had felt its mind touch hers. The power within her had been called forth, and the creature had retreated. But that wasn't all. She could still feel the echo of its presence lingering in her mind like a distant warning. She could feel it now, as the heavy metallic doors slowly began to open. The trial wasn't just a test of physical strength. It was a test of everything she had become. She was more than just a cadet now. She was the key to something much larger, something beyond the scope of anything the commanders had planned. And the Deathworld? It was alive, aware of her presence, its very creatures reacting to her in ways they never had before. Cadet? Commander Vax's voice cut through her thoughts, low and stern. You know what's at stake. This is your last chance to prove you have what it takes. Fail, and you will be left behind. The cadet nodded, her eyes narrowing in determination. She wasn't just going to survive the trial. She was going to face whatever awaited her head-on. She had no choice. Whatever was inside her, whatever strange power had awakened, she had to understand it. Now. She stepped forward, crossing the threshold and entering the trial grounds. The world around her shifted as if the planet itself had sensed her arrival. The air grew thicker, heavier, filled with an electric charge that sent a shiver down her spine. The ground trembled beneath her feet, and for a moment, everything went silent. The creatures, those terrifying apex predators, were watching. They knew she was there. The first challenge came swiftly, a massive 8-legged creature known as the Cragjaw. It charged at her with a deafening screech. its claws slashing the air, but the cadet didn't flinch. She had faced similar threats before. She raised her weapon, but as she did, something strange happened. A deep, unsettling voice echoed in her mind, one she didn't recognize. "You're not ready yet." The cadet hesitated, her finger on the trigger. The cragjaw lunged at her, but at the last second it stopped. It froze, its glowing eyes locked onto hers, and then, just as the Razorfang had done before, it turned and fled. Confusion and fear rippled through her. What was happening to her? But there was no time for questions. Another predator appeared, then another, each one more terrifying than the last. The cadet fought them off with everything she had, her skills tested to the absolute limit. But no matter how many times she struck them down, more would appear. She realized then that the trial wasn't about defeating the creatures, it was about something far deeper. The planet wasn't just testing her strength, it was testing her will. The world around her began to warp. The creatures were no longer just creatures. They were symbols of the power she was beginning to grasp, each one a manifestation of the forces that now surrounded her. The longer she fought, the more she realized these creatures weren't her enemies, they were her teachers. But something else was rising, something more sinister. Far in the distance, the silhouette of a massive, shadowy figure loomed on the horizon. The ground cracked beneath its weight as it moved closer, and with it came the unmistakable sound of an ancient, terrifying roar. It was the Sovereign, the creature Kara had warned her about, the one that controlled them all. The cadet's blood ran cold. She had been preparing for the wrong enemy all along. The Sovereign was no mere creature. It was the true force behind everything, the one who had been waiting for her to awaken. And now, with her powers still uncontrolled, it was coming for her. The final trial was no longer about survival. It was about confrontation. She had to face the Sovereign and herself. With a deep breath, the cadet stepped forward. The power inside her surged, a dark and ancient force filling her body, filling the very air around her. She wasn't just a cadet anymore. She was something more. And as the Sovereign approached, its massive form casting a shadow over the entire landscape, she knew this battle would change everything. The apex of power. The sky above the cadets' head had turned an unsettling shade of red, the twin suns hanging low in the horizon like burning eyes. The ground beneath her feet vibrated, and the air crackled with an electric intensity that could only mean one thing. The Sovereign was close. It had been drawing closer with every passing moment, its shadow swallowing the landscape, and with it, the planet seemed to shift, as if it were holding its breath. For a moment, the cadet stood frozen, her pulse thundering in her ears. She had fought off countless predators, but this was something else entirely. The Sovereign was more than just a creature. It was a force, an embodiment of the ancient power that flowed through the planet. The very thing she had been feeling, growing inside her. The thing she had never fully understood until now. As she looked up at the towering figure emerging from the distance, something stirred deep within her. The connection was undeniable. The power that had first manifested when the Razorfang had backed away. It was pulsing now, stronger than ever, thrumming through her veins. It wasn't just a part of her. It was her. She had become the living embodiment of the Sovereign's influence, a conduit for something far greater than herself. The creatures that had once feared her, they weren't afraid of her at all. They had feared this power, the same power that had shaped their world for millennia. The Sovereign loomed before her now, its massive plated body gleaming in the eerie red light, its eyes, like pools of darkness, locked onto hers. For a moment, neither moved. The silence was deafening, broken only by the low hum of the energy around them. Then the Sovereign spoke. "You are the one," it rumbled, its voice like thunder, vibrating through her bones. "The one who carries the power of ages. The one who will lead them all." The cadet's throat went dry. The power within her surged as though it had a mind of its own, pulling her forward. She hadn't asked for this. She had never wanted this. She was just a cadet, a soldier in a brutal, unforgiving world. But now, standing before the sovereign, the truth hit her like a tidal wave. She wasn't just a soldier. She was the inheritor of an ancient legacy, a leader born to command not just the creatures of the Deathworld, but the very forces that controlled it. The sovereign took a step closer, its weight shaking the earth beneath her. The cadet's breath caught in her chest as the ground split open, revealing the vast network of tunnels below, where the apex predators, creatures that had once been the undisputed rulers, were waiting. Their glowing eyes peered up at her, but they no longer looked at her with hatred or fear. They looked at her with reverence. The sovereign's voice boomed again, cutting through the air like a blade. It is time. Time for you to take your place. Lead them. Rule them. The cadet could feel the power surging within her, threatening to overwhelm her senses. The creatures, the Deathworld itself, it all seemed to pulse with life, as if it were waiting for her command. The once chaotic, violent world had settled into a strange stillness, awaiting the next move. But then, doubt crept in. Was she ready for this? Was she capable of leading such an ancient, powerful force? What if she was just a pawn in a game much larger than she could understand? What if the power she had embraced would consume her instead of empowering her? As the sovereign's eyes glowed with ancient wisdom, the cadet realized something. This wasn't about controlling the power. It was about understanding it, becoming it. She wasn't meant to be a puppet or a weapon. She was meant to be the bridge between the Deathworld and the creatures that had once ruled it. The sovereign wasn't her enemy. It was her ally, her guide. With a deep breath, the cadet closed her eyes for a brief moment. She let the power flow through her, not as something to fear, but as a part of her, an extension of her will. She wasn't just a cadet anymore. She was the sovereign's chosen heir, the one who would lead the creatures, command the Deathworld, and reshape the future of everything that lived upon it. When she opened her eyes, the red light of the twin suns seemed to dim, replaced by the soft, golden glow of something new. The power within her was no longer an overwhelming force, it was a harmonious balance. The creatures, once hostile and dangerous, now knelt before her, their allegiance clear. The sovereign, too, stepped back, bowing its head in respect. The cadet raised her hand, her voice steady and strong as it echoed across the vast landscape. It is time for a new beginning.